I'm with the Aspen Institute, which is really lucky to partner with the Atlantic to put this event on. For those of you who don't know the Aspen Institute, we are a convener of high-level leadership discussions around the country and the world that promotes values-based leadership in all kinds of policy areas. I invite you to take one of our magazines, which are here on display. But mostly, I just want to thank my colleagues at the Atlantic for putting together such a wonderful program today. And also thank you to everyone who's watching online and following us at hashtag New York Ideas or at the Aspen Institute or Atlantic online. Now I'm going to introduce the president and co-founder of Doblin, Larry Keeley. Backstage, he asked me to do anything I could to lower the expectations for his remarks. So I will not tell you that he's a world-renowned innovation expert who speaks to all kinds of businesses about innovation and the success that can result from it. So, Larry?
What a pleasure to be here at the Ideas Festival. The question I have for you is, how many of you think we live in the most intense time of change in the history of our species? Just quick show of hands, okay? All right, so sociologists aren't sure about this. This is a question that scientists have asked, and it's hard to answer. You want to look at it, one of the most practical ways to look at it, you imagine a small child born today, let's say in rural China or rural India, and you ask how much her life is going to differ from the lives of her parents and her grandparents in a single generation. And looked at that way, there's plenty of evidence that we do live in the most intense time of change in the history of our species. It's harder, though, when you realize the sort of paradox of change, right? When you stand in the present, the kind of change that's easy for people to spot is step change, right? We didn't used to have Uber, and then a little piece of magic shows up, and we've got that, or Airbnb. What's harder to do is to understand what it means to change at the pace we're changing right now. And in a room of people devoted to ideas, it sometimes helps to calibrate about that. Let's see how many of you get this one right. Let's just take an arbitrary timeline where one point is now, and way back over here, 30,000 years ago, is the beginning of Homo sapiens. Or if you buy into that crazy Chuck Darwin idea, 2 million years ago is the beginning of Homo sapiens, right? And let's also take a line from right now up, and let's just say arbitrarily that 100% of all the data that exists right now is an amount we could just label 100%. How many years do we have to go back in order to have only 10% that much data in the whole world? Okay? Anyone want to shout out a guess? 15 years. 1 year. Any other guesses? We got a pretty big range so far. 75 years. 10 years. Okay, bigger range. The right answer is 2. And the freaky thing is, next year that interval is going to be shorter. And I want us to all understand that in that immense new pace of change, cadence of change, our instincts are all weird. You know, our instincts are designed for predictable change, the kind we've lived since we were this high. And now we're in a different time, which is the reason why it's so lovely to be in a group of individuals in one of the most interesting places in the world that are actually trying to get a little out in front of the ideas that are timely and topical. And so it makes me particularly happy that I get to be the warm-up band for Sheila Nevins. I've raised 3 adult daughters. This was weird for me because I grew up in a family with 5 brothers. And then I found myself in my own family with 1 wife, 3 daughters, a female dog, and a male dog that was a mama's boy. So it was freaky weird. I developed a little formula for trying to be a decent dad to daughters. I think what we all have to develop is a deep sense, especially for young women, of what it means to cultivate curiosity about a world that's changing, confidence, particularly confidence in our own skills, and the courage to make the boldest possible choices, not the obvious or safest possible choices. And Sheila Nevins has done this as well as any woman on planet Earth, even though she will not take credit for that. Let me show you another weird thing about change in your lifetime. When you were born, everybody in the room, almost every piece of data that went through the air now goes through cables and through the land. And almost every piece of data that used to go through cables and through the land now goes through the air. How many of you don't even have a landline phone at home? Just so I can calibrate. Look at the number of hands up, ladies and gentlemen. This is astonishing. In your lifetime, that shift has happened, and more than you know, Sheila Nevins precipitated it. She was one of the first 10 employees at HBO when it had a radical new idea that if it put on fantastic programming that people were compelled by, they would pay a special fee to watch it every month without any commercials. Which raises the question of, well, what are you going to do to have amazing content each and every month? And that was Sheila's job, at least in part. From the very beginning, she's the one that's figured out how to take important ideas, as you'll hear from here in a moment, ideas that she sees in the popular culture, whatever they are, sharks or prize fighters or government leaders or political changes or sex, and the way in which people deal drugs or do anything, and she's figured out how to tell those stories from inside of ordinary people's lives. Because this is another frontier of modern times. While there is more data analytics than ever before, biggest consulting product in the history of the world, by the way, what people are especially hungry for is the kind of stories we've been hearing and enjoying on the stage all day, the kinds of stories that we get from This American Life or from Radio Lab, the kinds of stories we get, stories of personal vulnerability in TED, or when we're at our best, here on this stage at the Ideas Week, okay? So let me tell you how much I've appreciated the chance to just stand on the stage briefly and be the warm-up band for Sheila. Let's listen to an extraordinary woman describe what she did to learn to tell the stories of ordinary people about topics that she cared about in a way that radically introduced a new business model in media, and did so 30 years ago when there was no precedent, and which went on to change the world forever. We live now in a time which I believe, and I bet most of you agree, is the true golden age of television, where there are more compelling stories available with better tradecraft than ever before. Sheila showed us how that happened. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.